Indonesia, 129 people are dead after panic erupts at a soccer match between two rival teams. Police fired tear gas to stop a brawl between fans when the Premier League game ended. Police say hundreds of people began running to an exit gate trying to avoid the tear gas. Some people died after suffocating. Others were trampled to death. More than 300 other people were rushed to nearby hospitals.
We start with a developing story we're following out of Indonesia. Police say at least 130 people are dead after chaos and violence erupted at a soccer match between two of the country's biggest teams. Have a look. You can see in this video the clashes between fans and security forces. Authorities say a deadly stampede occurred after police fired tear gas into the crowd. Nearly 200 people were injured as well. Many were transported to nearby hospitals, suffering from lack of oxygen and shortness of breath. CNN senior international correspondent Will Ripley is following this story from Taipei for us. Will, take us through how this tragedy happened.
Well, the tear gas is going to be the key focal point here as they look into why this stampede occurred, because according to survivors, according to journalists who were covering this match, which was expected to be a high-risk match, this is a Saturday night in East Java, Indonesia. Indonesia, known for passionate football fans. Brawls are not uncommon after a contentious match. And yet when police decided to fire tear gas at the lower stands to stop people from rushing the pitch, and in a stadium setting, tear gas is not something that is even allowed by football's governing body, FIFA. A wind gust or some sort of movement of air pushed the tear gas into the upper stands, where there were families with children, and people started to panic. There was a mass panic because people were breathing this in, their eyes were burning, their throats were burning, and they tried to get for the exit. And when you have hundreds of people trying to rush towards one exit as quickly as possible, you end up with people being suffocated, as you just described. You end up with people who are trampled. There were dozens of people, several dozen, who are believed to have been killed almost instantly in this. But then the others that were loaded into ambulances and cars and raced to area hospitals with various injuries, a lot of those people died even before they arrived at the hospital, or they died shortly after arrival. And so the number of at least 130 right now is expected to go up. And it's just horrific to imagine, as bad as these images look, that they were shot from a distance. Imagine if you were caught up there in the middle of that with your kids or with somebody who you love, and then you tried to get to a safer place because you couldn't breathe. And so obviously you have, Indonesian authorities vowing to look into this. The Indonesian President Joko Widodo said that there will be a thorough evaluation, both into how the football match was held, whether it was perhaps sold, in an overcapacity type of scenario, because apparently, according to Indonesia's chief security minister, there were 42,000 tickets sold. Stadium should have only been holding around 38,000 safely. Also, the president of Indonesia saying that this is a human tragedy, and he doesn't want to let another one happen in the future. So they really have a lot of soul-searching to do here. This is now the deadliest football disaster in Indonesian history, and the world's second deadliest stadium disaster. The last time that we saw anything close to this scale was Peru, almost 60 years ago in Lima, Peru. So clearly, Kim, a lot of questions being asked, a lot of people who are having to grapple with the reality that their loved ones who went to a football match, which is supposed to be fun and exciting, they never came home.
Yeah, absolutely tragic. Will Ripley, thanks so much. Appreciate that. As Will mentioned there, sadly, this isn't the first time that incidents at soccer matches have led to tragic loss of life. April 1989, the FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest, overcrowding at the Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, England, ultimately led to the deaths of 97 Liverpool supporters following a crash. And 21 years ago, in Ghana, around 126 people were killed in a soccer stadium stampede when police fired tear gas at rioting fans, and it was one of Africa's worst soccer disasters. And then in the 1960s, as Will mentioned, more than 300 fans in Lima, Peru lost their lives during an Olympic qualifying match between Peru and Argentina. So we will continue to monitor the tragedy in Indonesia, and we'll give you updates as soon as we learn more.
Some trampled, many more suffocated. When defeated Arema FC fans invaded the pitch in frustration at a 3-2 loss, they clashed with law enforcement, police quick to blame the fans.
The police had already taken preventive action before finally firing tear gas, because the supporters were already attacking the police, acting anarchically and burning vehicles.
Out of more than 100 deaths, 2 were police officers and the rest fans. One only 5 years old. 34 died in the stadium, the rest in hospital. Spectators could be seen carrying the wounded through the stadium.
After police fired the tear gas, they all ran toward the same direction, to exit gate number 10 and 12, causing a massive jam. During the jam, shortness of breath occurred because they were running out of oxygen.
In a country with a history of disorder at football matches, supporters of the away side, Persebaya Surabaya, were not allowed to buy tickets to the match. The Indonesian government has promised thorough investigation into the fiasco. In a lengthy Instagram post, Security Minister Mahfud MD condoled with the families of victims and seemed to place responsibility with the organisers. He said that the authorities had suggested that the match be held in the afternoon, not at night, and that the number of tickets issued should be 38,000, not 42,000, in line with stadium capacity. These recommendations were not implemented.
At least 127 people have died after a crowd stampede at a soccer match in Indonesia. Let's go live to our correspondent Anne Barker, who joins us now from Jakarta. Anne, what happened?
Lorna, we're still hearing a lot of the details, but we know that there was a match last night at Malang in East Java between Persebaya, which is the team from Surabaya, and Arema, which is the local team in Malang. Now, Arema lost 2-3 in that match. Apparently, after the match finished, the fans invaded the pitch. There was a riot that broke out with the other side. Police moved in with tear gas, which apparently caused panic, and that obviously led to a stampede where people were desperate to leave the ground. We're talking of tens of thousands of people here. I'm not sure what the full capacity of that ground was, but more than 120 people were killed, possibly more, 180 that have been injured. A lot of those people died at the scene, apparently from suffocation. No doubt many were trampled to death. A couple of those killed were also police officers. Hundreds of people, I gather 300 people, were taken to hospital, and of them, many more died, about another 90 perhaps, and maybe 180 that are still in hospital. Now they have suspended matches for a week in this Premier League of Indonesia. Obviously, both the Football League and police are investigating exactly what happened. This kind of violence is not rare in Indonesia. There have been many cases where teams have broken out like this after matches, and even sort of violence that happens away from the actual match. We've seen stories before where there is rivalry that leads to even murders. There have been a lot of cases of violence like this in the past, but certainly we haven't seen deaths on a scale like this in Indonesia for many years, if ever. I doubt there's ever been a death toll like this.
Some of the pictures, Anne, are quite startling, horrendous. The riot police that go in fire the tear gas, as you say, and that seems to cause a stampede. Presumably there are provisions, there are protocols in place for how the police deal with this sort of incident.
Look, I have seen some comments that I haven't been able to verify, suggesting that it's not allowed, in fact, that it's banned from using tear gas at soccer matches under FIFA rules, the international body. I'm yet to confirm that. I don't know if that is the case, but certainly that seems to be what led to this riot and the panic that ensued. I mean, when you're talking about probably more than 100,000 people. I mean, soccer is, like in so many countries, a bit of a religion here in Indonesia. So these games attract massive crowds. We're talking about East Java, where not only is soccer sort of the premier sport for so many there, but we're talking about one of the most populated areas in Java, which itself takes half of Indonesia's population. Now, some of those pictures, as you say, show the damage. We've seen police trucks that appear to have been crushed or destroyed in this riot. There are pictures of the bodies just littering the ground. Obviously, we're still waiting for more information, Lorna, to know exactly how this transpired. But certainly the pictures that are coming through so far on social media are very graphic and tragic.
They are. Hundreds injured, taken to hospital. How has the infrastructure in Java coped with that?
Well, that's something we don't know yet, but, there's probably, not enough hospitals, surely, for that number of people. It obviously depends just how badly those people are injured. With that number of people in hospital, you would expect that death toll will probably rise. And as I say, I don't know how many hospitals there are in Malang. Malang is not actually a massive city. It's not like Surabaya, which is in fact the second biggest city in Indonesia. Malang is quite a bit smaller, but certainly there would be hospitals there, many hospitals in the region. But as to how they deal with a tragedy like this, we're yet to know.
Anne Barker, thank you.